Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about non-obvious things when it comes to selling tech to big companies. This has come up in a few different contexts. One is when I'm talking to more junior salespeople who know nothing, and like I start talking, they're like, really? It's like, yeah, this is the shit that nobody tells you, but that I have determined actually makes a difference. Also, like entrepreneurs. I was an entrepreneur once. I wish this is stuff somebody would have told me. So I like, I'm super passionate about sales process, operations, like back end stuff. So I like talking about it. So just show of hands, who's your technologist? Technologist in the room? Money investor. Just your role generally? Web developer. Awesome. Tech. Okay. So I love talking to technologists about this process, mostly because a lot of the engineers that I talk to think they know what sales is, and they really don't. Some of them do. Some are really good at it, though. There's a, because a lot of technologists are very smart. So some of them are smart enough to kind of figure it out. But a lot of them just kind of think they know, but they really don't. So I want to talk about some of that stuff. And I'm just going to start with some basics, and then we'll kind of make it more freeform. Like, I want to hear your questions and everything like that. So when it comes to enterprise sales, this is kind of, if you understand this, like, you know most of it. You know 80% of it, right? So your ultimate goal is to get to a decision maker and kind of satisfy their needs. They're the people with the money, or have, that have budget, can have the authority to buy something, right? This is you, right? And so sales is all of this for the most part, particularly like for new companies that you've never worked with before, but it's basically the same for existing companies. This is your value proposition. So your job is to get your value proposition to that person. You won't really know what this is until you really kind of talk to that person or talk to somebody that knows that person, but you can kind of speculate, right? In that process, you usually go through an influence, right? So rarely do you start, if you're selling a piece of technology to a CTO, rarely do you start the conversation with the CTO. Oftentimes you start with somebody who's inside their organization, but is just influential in that decision. And they start talking to you, they give you a little information, you give them some information, they kind of eventually bubble stuff to that person, etc. Then, oftentimes you will need to deal with other people in that organization that are not that decision maker, but are important for the decision, like IT, legal, C-suite, somebody like that. That's basically how it works, right? At a high level. These are different sales stages. Every company I've worked at has some version of this, and I'll just go through this really quickly just to kind of set the stage, and we'll make it super interactive. The very first stage is, kind of speculative prospecting. That's like when you literally know nothing. Like, you're just getting started. You're like, I might be able to sell something to this company. But I haven't talked to them. They don't know me. I'm going to maybe start prospecting for them. Maybe start reaching out to them and say, hey, pay attention. Discovery is really the next phase. That's where you're just asking them information and figuring out what this person cares about. You might have to ask this person what that person cares about. You might have to ask this person what they care about, and get but what you're doing during discovery is figuring out information about the company, what they want, what they need, why, that kind of stuff. Qualification is the process you go through to determine whether they are a good fit for what you do, and whether you're going to be able to actually get the deal approved on your side, right? Whether you want to do business with them or not. Positioning is when you're taking your value proposition and now you're really describing that to them. And it's usually not functional. It's usually not features. It's usually a business outcome that they're looking for. That's a huge distinction, particularly for technologists. They love to think about, their features. Right? Go tell them our features. Go tell them. No one buys features. No one cares. They care about their business outcomes and how your features might, support them, but they don't care. Pricing comes relatively late in the sales cycle after you've built up the value of your solution to the decision maker, the person making the decision. Then you tell them how much it costs, right? Because you want them to think that the value of that is as high as possible before you tell them how much it costs. It's in your interest to maximize the deal size. Negotiation is usually kind of like the contract terms and stuff like that. A lot of, what will we give us? Net 30 contract terms, net 80 contract. Our legal department, wants some limitation of liability, or, you know what I mean? Negotiation is usually, pretty contractual. It's what's pulled on the deal, and it's kind of interesting. And then closing is, kind of finishing it. We've talked to everybody agrees, everybody's cool, you're going to sign on this time at this date for this amount of money. Here's the person that's going to sign. That's closing. Okay, so that's the background. Now I want to ask you, is there any, you see how I ask this question. Is there anything you guys want to know? Or here's what are some of the obstacles to selling that you've run into or have heard about or can imagine related to any of this? Have you guys ever tried to sell anything? Ever run into any problems selling anything?
I think one of the more recent phenomena is with all the automated sales tools, sales sequences, how inundated people are with inbound. Hey, I saw that you're a Nebraska graduate. I'd love to spend some time talking about my wealth management stuff. So that's something I'm noticing. There's this inundation of automated outreach that is no longer human, but automated.
Yes. So a couple of things about that. So people really started doing that sequencing stuff in mass 10 years ago. And you're absolutely right that we're now at a point where people have kind of figured that out. People do it a lot. Therefore, decision makers get a lot of emails and things like that. So what we've seen is the good thing about that stuff is it's highly trackable, right? You can run data and see how email open rates are used. And they have a little bit. Have conversion rates between an email and getting a meeting with somebody that's ever reduced over time. They have a little bit. Cold calling has not reduced as much, but it's not as good. So what's your question?
You were saying that anything I noticed.
Yeah, in terms of
philosophy, it's scar tissue.
Yes, so that's 100% true. And so what I've seen come back a little bit is face to face. So some, kind of inviting a group of CTOs to a dinner and presenting some best practices kind of conversations. That was kind of hot, in the 90s, late 90s. That's kind of coming back now. The face-to-face stuff, I think also post-COVID, people are kind of now thinking about face-to-face and understanding, there was actually a value there, So that's coming back a little bit. I think people are getting better at managing referrals, right? So in other words, understanding who their existing customers are and giving them incentives to talk to their peers about their solution. So that's one of those old school word of mouth things that is starting to kind of come back a little bit in the face of reduced connect rates and things like that. But you're absolutely right. With all those tools, things have gotten much more sophisticated and volume has gone up. But the other thing about those tools is they do let you target more precisely. So it's not as if anybody's spending tons and tons of time on true spam. They're really trying to spend as much time as they can to think about how do I make this right? How do I give them results? Okay, awesome question.
The other thing I noticed too is your influencer. You mentioned this. I'd like you to get positive further. The influencer might have another influencer. Sure. Influencers tend to have a different decision making than decision makers. So in terms of should be taxes. What are thoughts and experiences have you had to figure out how to figure out each layer?
Yeah. So you can always ask them and understand that they may or may not give you an accurate answer. Okay. You can always ask them questions like, "What does your boss think?" You know what I mean? What would you have to do to get your boss's attention? It's what does your boss care about? Questions like that will kind of get into it. Who else needs to approve this? You know what I mean? It's one of those questions. So you can always ask them. Oftentimes they will not give you accurate answers, especially not the first time, because for a variety of reasons. They want to kind of make it sound like they're more important in the process. than they really are. Sometimes they're just wrong, you know what I mean? Sometimes they think they know what the boss wants, but they don't, you know what I mean? Like a lot of times this communication isn't perfect, you know? Like they might not know what the decision is. They might not know what the boss wants. It might prompt them to go and ask them and find out. And guess what? Sometimes your boss will tell you something that is not true. You know what I mean? I asked my boss that. It was like, you know, what keeps you up? Boss, it was sales enablement. So you know, did this whole thing on sales enablement. Did a budget. So he didn't even say like, oh, I want something a little bit different, or no, something else is more important. He was wrong. He was full of crap. Like it wasn't that important to him. He thought it was at that moment, and that's what he told me, and that's why I ran it. That happened. That kind of communication happens all the time. So really, it's about testing over and over. I think the biggest thing with all of this is that if they need it, they're gonna buy it. They might not buy it from you. They might not buy it this year. They might build it internally. They might buy it from a competitor, but they're going to buy it. It's going to happen. And there's no amount of forcing this that you can do that is going to end up in a sale. What you can do is facilitate. This is facilitation. You know what I mean? It's like project management. It's not like me telling you, like, you need to buy it, and here's why, and here's the reasons, and here's the ROI, and blah, 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 and blah, you know what I mean? Like, that's not how it works. It's you have a need. Now, I might help you think about that need in a way that's advantageous. But that's facilitation, right? That's like not selling as a lot. Okay.
I was thinking about your question, and I was like, if I had to pinpoint what was the blocker for me, what would it be? I think, man, I got to spend the rest of the weekend thinking about that question. But I also came up with the idea of timing. Like you said, if they need it, they're going to buy it. But it may be a year from now. How do I make sure that I'm still top of mind? And then I kind of answered my own question. I know a guy locally who's hiring somebody specifically to do that and say, hey, what's your next quarter?
Right.
You know, let's keep us in mind.
Yeah. So I think of a few ways about this. So a lot of that can be addressed with branding, which is truly on the marketing side. That's not this.
Yeah.
Right? On the branding side, one of the things that you're doing is you're trying to get them to associate the solution of a problem with your brand, with your logo, with your name, right? And in the context where they're not ready to buy right now, but they're going to buy 5 years from now, 2 years from now, 1 year from now, I think it's really helpful to have your brand in their brain. So that's its own art and science, you know what I mean? But I think it is very relevant to selling, right? To getting people. Along those lines, kind of like I was saying before, you can't really force things. It's very difficult to create urgency, right? You would love to be able to. You would love to be able to take this person's urgency from 2 to 10. You can't really do that. It's usually external factors. It's usually their CEO. It's usually like other internal stuff that's going on. They do an acquisition. They do an divestiture. They do, you know what I mean? Like it's usually other stuff that creates urgency. It's like salespeople really can't. But you can be aware, right? So you can be aware if an acquisition goes down and then kind of use that in your messaging to show them that you kind of get it. That doesn't hurt. It's just not going to.
There are some people, there's this one person in particular that I know is like, their team's not going to cut it. And it's like, call me when you fail.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you can say that. You know what I mean? Like, I anticipate you're going to have a problem with this in here. I'm here for it. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being top of mind. Nothing wrong with, 6 months later, putting them on a drip campaign. 6 months later, you send them a piece of 2-page collateral. Oh my God, 20 pages. But 2 pages, hey, I was thinking about your business and, this seemed like it was kind of relevant. Let me know if that works. Does that give you anything? Not really. But it's organizing your mind to think about the business. You know what I mean? It's really something that's good discipline for you versus something that's necessarily going to be valuable.
I don't know, I would love to call me if you fail, or when you fail. Just because it shows me that you know what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you have the confidence to tell me that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's absolutely true. Yeah, I mean, if you know that industry, if you know the trends, if you know the tech, if you know all that stuff well enough to know, like with the CrowdStrike thing, somebody could have said 6 months ago, hey, call me when CrowdStrike won't reboot or whatever it
Right.
was.
Oh, I can call you so
It
fast.
was like a genius, right? You know what I mean? So I think there's something to it.
So if more of the stuff is about more efficiency to get to something you work on, what are you doing to prepare for the actual human interaction?
Yeah.
What kind of things, based on this, what are some of your tips and tricks and pro tips that you can share?
Yeah, so let me give a little bit of a background first, and then I'll address that directly. So I came up with some things of what you need in order to do B2B sales. Intellectual curiosity, tolerance for change, bravery, business acumen, research and preparation, and enablement or training, right? And so in terms of research and prep, I think you need to go in, this is like you have a meeting. You have a meeting with this person. Okay.
I got my drip sequence broke through, got my session.
You got the meeting. Perfect. You want to know what you want to come out of that meeting.
Yeah.
And you want to know what they want to come out of that meeting. And if you know what they want to come out of that meeting with, that will guide all your prep. Right? Now, a lot of people will be like, get a meeting and be like, okay, I'm going to show up. You know what I mean? And it's like, if you know what they want to get out of it, you're going to be so much better prepared to address what they need, right? To help them move up this chain or to help this person, right? So you can ask them. You know, this is one of those things where like,
Before the meeting.
yeah.
Because usually that's how the meeting goes for me. It's like, hey, we're kind of looking around this area. And then I'm like, oh, tell me what your actual problem is.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to think on the fly. And you're saying, like, to prepare for our meeting,
Yeah.
what do you want?
What do you want? Easy way to say it.
Respect your time.
What do you want to cover?
Okay.
You can ask it very general. What do you want to cover? You can ask a little more specific. What do you want to get out of this? Like, what do you want to walk away with?
Make sure I make things close to your time.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
You can ask, I sort of think this is important to you, but you tell me. I sort of think you want me to cover this in the meeting, but maybe you don't. Maybe you want something else. What do you want? If they don't have time to tell you that, if they don't respond to that question, it gives you an indicator like they're probably not that serious. Right? They probably don't have a problem that is very big. Right? And one of the things that you want to do during discovery, really qualification is, is this a $10,000 problem? Is this a $12,000 problem? Like, because a lot of people, especially lower in the organization, think a $10,000 problem is they're like, oh, we got to get on this right away. And you talk to the CTO and they're like, yeah, it's fine.
Nuisance.
You're right.
Yeah.
You can do that with Excel. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. They're freaked out about it, but, that helps them to decide.
About minutes or you have a question?
That was 4.
4 minutes.
It's actually effectively got me questioned before too. It's worked both ways.
Real quick, I just want to talk about non-obvious determinants of success. This is the type of thing nobody likes to talk about. Number 1, luck.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Being lucky, being in the right place at the right time has a very high correlation with success. Much more than anyone else. Salespeople want you to think that it's their skill and charm and knowledge and clever. Really what salespeople want you to think is that it's unknowable. That it's only just something internal to that one person that allows them to be successful. They want everybody to know this. Luck has a lot your territory has a lot to do with it. So the internal politics that you play with your management to get assigned the right territory has a lot to do with success. Internal politics. Same. All right. Last few questions.
Do you have any juicy nugget case studies or specific examples of anything that we covered already?
For what I'm selling today, no, because our marketing team's like, but I can talk about it. So what I will say is the best case study is something that is quantitative, written in the voice of an existing client that's similar to your ICP. So, and some companies are pretty good at this, right? They'll have a CTO's picture, and he'll say, I was struggling with X. I engaged this company. They did Y. The results were Z, and I was super happy, right? If you can get that in a quantitative way, I saved $1 million by working with this person. That, in my opinion, is the best case study because it's real. The rest of it's super fun, right? The rest of it's just like, oh yeah, they helped us optimize our process. What was that? You know what I mean? Again, was that a $10,000 problem? $1 million. If it's $1 million problem, then I'm going to take the time to try to help you, other CTO. You know what I mean? Like now it's worth both of our time to get on a 30-minute call and talk about how to save you $1 million. If we don't really know, maybe it's worth your time, maybe it's not. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like it's a lot more difficult for you to justify all this time that it takes. So you really have to be conscious of your time. What is worth your time? What's worth my time? So I'm solving $1 million problems. It's not really worth my time to sell talent.